Welcome to another Kingdom Reviews, this time for the longly teased Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse review. So, this review won't have all of my normal details of the themes and concepts within the movie because over a year ago, the Branch and I did a whole deep dive into the spider symbol across culture, from an esoteric perspective, from a cultural perspective, from a historical perspective, from a mythological perspective, anything that we could figure out on the symbolism of the spider across all medium, across all time, we compiled. And it took about a year to do. And um, it took about a year to do, and it's about 2.5 hours long or so. And we also did a second episode over Madam Web and the production behind Madam Web and the inverted symbolism of that fiasco of a movie. And so we have, and that was like an hour, 2 hours plus on its own as well. So we have 2 additional spider adjacent videos that goes into so much more detail, and it's some of our most watched content on this channel. So if you want a full-on deep dive into just the spider symbol, go watch our video Moray and the Fabric of Creation and Webs of Desire as Valentine's Day Swing. Those 2 episodes just go into so much more detail, and I highly suggest if you watch any other video on our channel at the moment, it'll 2 good ones are the Moray and the Fabric of Creation, and my personal favorite is the very first episode I did where Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Anyways, yeah, so this episode is just going over additional spider symbolism that I've found on top of what I've already done in the past. So if you want more of all that stuff, those videos are still there. Again, that's Moray and the Fabric of Creation and Webs of Desire, a Valentine's Day Swing. And again, highly recommend the Moray and the Fabric of Creation episode. So this episode, the official review of Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, what could that entail? Well, if I'm not, I'll be lightly going over some of the previous stuff. I'm not diving into it. What could this be about? Well, recently, you guys know that I've been talking about, spider synchronicity, guys. You can't see it, but there is a baby spider on my computer screen right now. I'm going to take a picture of it because this is a really cool synchronicity. So I'm doing my Spider-Man review, and a spider just hopped onto my computer screen. Just took a picture of it. That's pretty wild. There is a synchronicity. Has any of you? Yes, it just started. I just started. Thanks, Dan. I posted a teaser trailer of sorts. I used AI to create a teaser trailer I was just messing around with AI, and I coupled together that, and I posted it like, "Hey, this is coming out," just to see how it would work with the algorithm. Was the algorithm is a topic of this discussion. So yeah, so I'm going to let the little baby spider hang out on my computer screen, or for the rest of it, for as long as it desires. Has any of you guys listening in the comments, have any of you experienced spider synchronicities? I've experienced a multitude of spider synchronicities in my life. And I think that's one of the reasons why I think it's very fascinating. That's where a spider can, exactly. So anyways, let's get this started. So Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse is the sequel to Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. It's two of what it's supposed to be a trilogy of films, made by Sony Animation, by Mike Lord and Phil Miller, I believe are the names. And it really encapsulates, of course, the idea of Spider-Man in a sense that live action films can't really do. And I've talked about in our previous videos how the Spider-Man mythology really hits for young boys, and that's because it's tapping into this deeper archetype of the spider, and it's tapping into the hero's journey, of course, like all superheroes do. And the Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse and Into the Spider-Verse, or the Spider-Verse movies, and even the Spider-Man live-action films, usually the start of the hero's journey for Spider-Man, whether it's Peter Parker or Miles Morales or any of the other Spider people, it's usually taking that leap of faith and jumping off the top of a building and swinging for the first time, which every little boy has dreamed of doing, right? But that is the leap of faith. That's the full card in the tarot. That's the leap of faith. So if you're not familiar, you can lay out the tarot to map out the hero's journey. So there's another layer to that. The Spider-Verse movies are loosely adapted from the Spider-Verse comics, which, again, I won't fully get into all that back stuff because I have a whole other video more in the fabric of creation that gets into that. But it's based off of these comics, and Phil Lord and Chris Miller do their own thing. They heavily go into a different direction with it, which I think is an interesting idea that they are doing in the film versus the comics. And again, Spider-Man is like this lightning in a bottle that when Stan Lee and Steve Ditko created the character, they're tapping into this deeper mythology of the spider. And so Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, it picks up about a year after Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, where Miles Morales, our main character, has been Spider-Man for about a year. He's fought a smaller street-level rogues gallery villains from the Spider-Man mythology, and he's kind of coming up into his own. He got his own custom suit now. There isn't just a spray painted version of Peter Parker's suit. He got his own original suit. He's the main Spider-Man of his universe now. And if you haven't seen Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, that movie was basically about Spider-Man in Miles's universe was Peter Parker, and it's supposed to be like the idyllic version of Peter Parker when he's like in his prime, and he goes to save Miles from Kingpin and his version of the Green Goblin, which is modeled after the Ultimate universe of the comics. If you're a comic book fan, it's the Ultimate version of the characters. They have a whole universe called the Ultimate Universe. So you have the ultimate versions of all these characters in Miles' universe. And Peter Parker saves Miles from King. Oh man, I don't know if you can hear that. That's the wind. The wind's really strong today. It whistled like it's a whispering wind, whispering willows. Anyways, Spider-Man could not swing outside today. Peter Parker saves Miles, and in doing so, he dies. Kingpin kills Peter Parker, and right before Miles is saved by Peter Parker, he gets bit by a spider with the number 42, which of course 42, the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy is the answer to all life. 42 is also, I think the Brant, my co-host on the channel, has talked about how they say that you're not supposed to understand the Bible and these deeper philosophical, spiritual concepts until you're around 42 years old. That's like a milestone age. It's heavily used in different modes of occultism and spiritualities and esoteric groups and people that practice magic and whatnot. So 42 has a resonance there, and the spider has the number 42 on it. And Miles is Miles is from the Ultimate Universe, but the spider that he gets bit by was from a different universe called Earth 42. That's why it has the number 42 on it. And it was stuck through to Miles' universe and eventually bites him because Kingpin, through his connections with Alchemax, which is like a tech company like Oscorp or Meta or Stark Industries or Oracle AI or Open AI, X, Tesla, Neuralink. It's kind of like that. Alchemax, of course, is a reference to alchemy. And so through shady business deals, he gets Alchemax to open up a portal because he wants to find a universe where he can be with his wife and his, I believe it's his son. Maybe it's his daughter, but I believe it's his son that Kingpin has. And the reason why he can't be with him is because they find out he's a supervillain, so they leave, and they're like, "We don't want anything to do with you being a supervillain. Like, you're fighting Spider-Man. Like, that's too crazy. Like, we're out of here." So he wants to find a universe where they don't know he's a supervillain. So because of Kingpin making this deal with Alchemax and creating a Hadron Collider, so think of in the real world with the our Hadron Collider and all this, so that maybe that it's foreshadowing something in our world. Like, we talked about shifting timelines and the mandala effect, and people have joked or referenced about the our actual Hadron Collider being the cause of that. Like, this is kind of hinting at that, or they turn on their Hadron Collider and Green Goblin shoves in his fight with Spider-Man, Peter Parker's Spider-Man, he shoves his face in the direction of the beam. So the Hadron Collider like picks up his DNA, and that's why it's sending spiders and spider people all across the dimension. Is because he would Peter Parker's face got shoved into the beam. So all that happens, and then a bunch of spider people come. They have to, face Kingpin and all this, and in doing so, Miles gets bit. Miles becomes this universe's, the Ultimate Universe's version of Spider-Man, since Peter Parker has died. And then that movie ends. And then Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, the movie I'm reviewing, starts up a year after that, where Miles Morales is been Spider-Man for about a year now. And it opens up with him fighting a villain called the Spot, which is kind of a goofy name. Essentially, the Spot in the story of the movie was a alchemic scientist who was working on the Hadron Collider for Kingpin. And when all the spider people was fighting Kingpin to stop him from ripping the universe apart with the Hadron Collider, they exploded the Hadron Collider, and when in that explosion, it hurt the scientist who becomes the Spot, but it didn't kill him. It turned him into a transcendental interdimensional being, where he's completely white void, and he's got black portals all over his body, and his portals can give him access to across the dimension, but he needs more of the power that the Hadron Colliders give off to give him more power. And so he's weak at the beginning when Miles Morales' Spider-Man meets him, and he's like, "You're just a villain of the week." So it's like very if you've seen the Scream franchise, it's very meta with them drawing references to the tropes and everything. That's one of the things, Spider-Man's quips. He's breaking the fourth wall. He's got his crown chakra, his halo and all that. Like, he's fully aligned, so he can break the fourth wall and make all these quips. But Miles Morales' Spider-Man jokes to the Spot and goes, "Well, you're just a villain of the week. You're not that powerful." So he's like, "I will become your most notorious arch nemesis." And so he goes on a journey across the dimensions to each universe where there is an Alchemax with a Hadron Collider to absorb each Hadron Collider's energy. And in doing so, he's causing trouble across the dimension. And the multiverse of the Spider-Verse is already kind of fractured because of the first movie. So he's just ripping it even more, doing what he's doing. And so you have all that. And meanwhile, you have in another universe, you have flies away. Yeah, not that powerful. Shoots still capable from wrist and flies away. Exactly. And so in a different universe, you have Gwen Stacy, who is a version of Spider-Woman, who in her universe, she gets bit instead of Peter Parker, and her version of Peter Parker dies in her fight with the Lizard, because in her universe, Peter Parker becomes the Lizard because he wants to be just like Gwen Stacy's Spider-Woman. So she's going through trauma, and then since she briefly meets Miles in the first movie, they have like a will they, won't they romance, like they're the in-game romance, whatever. So she's going through grief and trying to protect her own universe, but she's wanted in her universe by her dad, who's a police officer, because he doesn't know his daughter is Spider-Woman, and he's trying to catch who he thinks is the killer of his daughter's best friend, Peter Parker, who died since he was the Lizard, in that universe. So she's going through all her trauma of the hero's journey and trials and tribulations and whatnot. And she goes on the run from her dad, because she gets put up against the wall and he's about to shoot her. And she has to take off her mask and be like, "I'm Spider-Woman, Dad." And he's like, "I don't know what to do at this point. Like, do I arrest you, or, like, what do I do?" Well, as all this is happening, a different supervillain called the Vulture, who comes from a completely different dimension. Who is from a Da Vinci dimension where everything is like a Da Vinci drawing. Comes through and crashes her universe, and she tries to stop him. But meanwhile, Spider-Man 2099 and a different version of Spider-Woman comes through a portal because they're part of the Spider Society. The Spider Society is an elite force of spider people from across the Spiderverse that protect the fabric of creation, protect the Spiderverse, protect and try to hold up the fabric of creation, essentially, which they call the Spiderverse. And the comics, they do have tech watches to help them, but there's also a mystical side to it, which they don't really get into the mystical side in the movie. This movie, the Spider-Verse movie, is hardcore techie science. They don't do the mystical side of things, which I'll get into a little bit in a little bit. So they come through, and they're like, "We're the Spider Society. We're gonna send this Vulture back to his Da Vinci universe." And yeah, Mary Jane was interviewed by a vampire. Yeah, yeah. Mary Jane and Gwen Stacy are so interesting. The reason why Mary Jane wasn't creative was because everyone hated Gwen Stacy because she was just so plain and boring, and no one knew how to write for the character. So they killed off Gwen Stacy in the comic called "The Night Gwen Stacy Dies," where Peter can't save Gwen Stacy, and I believe it was the Green Goblin kills Gwen Stacy, and then he has to go through a grieving period, and thus he needs a new love interest. So they create Mary Jane, and the rest is history, as they say. So Gwen Stacy and Mary Jane has like this really odd dichotomy of relationship of how they was created. Mary Jane was only created because Gwen Stacy wasn't a fan favorite. Hate the yeah, it's like a Jekyll and Hyde sort of thing. Yeah, I think. Do you like there was also the Hobgoblin, the orange one. So I guess that one's slightly better. He's not the Green Goblin. Anyways, jokes aside and everything. So Spider-Man 2099 and the one of the pregnant black versions of Spider-Woman that came with him recruits Gwen Stacy, since she's on the lam from her dad who's trying to arrest her. Recruits her to be part of this Spider Society and this whole secret society of Spider people. And so she joins them, and they're going around and trying to uphold the fabric of creation. You see in the film later on when Spider-Man 2099, who is supposed to, who is named, real name is Miguel O'Hara. He's from like a Blade Runner future, and he actually owns Alchemax in the future. and he's like a techie Spider-Man. Which really weird version of his character is the only Spider-Man character. The Joker gets pulled over before the Green Goblin. Yeah. Spider-Man 2099 is the only Spider-Man character who doesn't get bit by a spider. All his stuff is tech-based. So it's a very interesting thing that he's the leader and he's the only one that doesn't get the spider bite that in the natural sense of the traditional sense of the Spider-Man mythology, at least. So in the movie, a little bit later on, we hear Spider-Man 2099 explaining the idea of the Spiderverse, and he has this whole like holodeck room, like AR algorithmic VR kind of space where he's is explaining the idea of the Spider-Verse. And it starts out the seed, so it's the one-dimensional, the seed. First there was, the word, the seed of God, the original vibration, the one dimension, and it drops, and then when it drops, it grows into a line and that line becomes a tree. So the tree of life in the Garden of Eden, or the Yggdrasil in Viking mythology, right? And so you get this, you go from the seed, the one dimension, to the two-dimensional line of the tree. And then from that, it becomes three-dimensional, multi-dimensional, and grows. That tree becomes a spider web. So I think that going how they depict it from the one dimension to the two dimension to the three dimension, the multi-dimensional spider web. So the spider web is just a tree, but just in a view from a different dimensional plane, and that's how they depict what in the comics. And they briefly reference this in the movie. They call it the webs of fate and destiny. Is what this was. What the technical term of the Spider-Verse is the webs of fate and destiny, which gets into the idea of the fabric of creation and string theory in science, right? The idea of veiled universe or the firmament. You get into all these kinds of ideas, and he's showing like how the multiverse is like the spider web, and where the spider web lines meet are nexus points, and those nexus points are what he in the movie they call it canon events, like canon in the storyline. Like, is it canon in the comics? Is it canon in a movie or whatever? He calls it them canon, the nexus points, canon events. And Spider-Man 29 explains that those are events that has to happen, that there was no way around it. There are undeniable events in reality, in across the universe. These moments have to happen, and he explains that those are like moments in Spider-Man in canon. Like his examples are the spider bite. Every Spider-Man has to get the spider bite, which he doesn't, which is kind of foreshadowing of what could happen later on in the third movie, once the third movie comes out. So things like the spider bite, Uncle Ben's death, and him giving the with great power comes great responsibility line. Like that's a canon event that has to happen. His other reference to something that has to happen in Spider-Man canon to as one of these Nexus events, these canon events, is the police chief of their universe has to they killed Uncle Ben and Aunt Jemima. Yeah. A police chief in each Spider-Man universe has to sacrifice himself to save a civilian while Spider-Man is fighting a villain. And Spider-Man 2099's whole point of explaining all of this in the movie is that not only are they the police of reality, they're the Spider Society upholding the fabrics of creation, and they need to uphold these Nexus events, because if these Nexus events don't happen, then the universe will cease to exist. That universe will completely fall apart, which will damage the Spiderverse, the webs of fate, the multiverse, as a whole. Like the micro will affect the macro kind of sort of thing. This whole relationship, and so they're all trying to make sure everything goes as planned, which is interesting because if you watch my Moray in the Fabric of Creation video I did about the Spider-Man symbol, which again, I get into all of this and more in that video. This is just kind of a quick summary so I can review the movie as just the movie on its own. In that video, I talk about how in different mythologies, and usually the idea of a spider creature or a spider being is a being that guards the fate or guards destiny, guards the script of life, of what's supposed to happen, guards the secrets of the story being told. So the Spider-Man mythology is resonating with this deeper archetype of the spider in that way, and so that's what Spider-Man 2099 is trying to express: is that we need to hold up the fabric of creation, make sure everything goes as planned. Make sure these Nexus events, these canon events, happen regardless of how traumatic they can be. So they can't all go save Uncle Ben. They all have to let Uncle Ben die. They all have to let a police officer, captain, sacrifice himself in battle. Like, these things have to happen. And when Miles learns about this, he realizes his dad is being, in his universe, is being anointed, being promoted to captain. And the spot, after he powers up from all the different Hydron colliders across the Spiderverse, he becomes this entirely like new being, interdimensional being of this crazy Rorschach kind of moving, expanding shape. I guess you can say he's like a 5D cube being or something now. Like, he's completely ascended into this other kind of reality, and he's like, once he powers up to that level, he's like, going back to universe, gonna attack your dad later. And so Miles realizes that his dad is the captain, and the Spot is going to go after his dad, and that is a Nexus event. And because that's a Nexus event, uh, all the other Spider people, including Spider-Man 2099 and his love interest, Spider-Woman, Spider-Gwen, or Gwen Stacy, whatever you want to call her, they all kind of sit back and they're like, you just gotta let fate happen. You gotta let destiny happen. And they're forgetting the third thing, right? They're forgetting will. And Miles wants to go after and stop the Spot from attacking his dad and stopping this Nexus event. And Spider-Man 2099, since he's like the leader of the Spider Society, he's like, no, you can't do that. So he tries to prevent Miles. He tries to trap Miles and hold him captive until his dad dies. Yeah, good point. Our linguistic grammar hasn't really caught up to some of these ideas, right? Good catch, Tim. Because uni means one. So going back to, yeah. Yep, exactly. Tim said going back to the universe should be going back to the multiverse. There can be only one universe, but many multiverses. So yeah, that's a linguistic error. And then that's where the Spider Society gets fractured, and they become two warring tribes. The people that agree with Spider-Man 2099 that you have to let these Nexus events happen, and there's nothing you can do, that you have no free will, that it's just fate and destiny. And then you have Miles and the people who are on Miles's side who say, no, we also have free will. And so they're basically, it's warring of the fates of the Moray, of the three sisters, of the Weavers. Right? It's they're kind of warring factions, representations of them. And so this movie ends with Miles heading back to, trying to get back to his universe to stop the Nexus events, or stop the Nexus event, the canon event of the Spot attacking his dad. And then you have the Spider people that are on his side, like Spider-Gwen, who are trying to follow him to help Miles. And then you have the ones that are against him, that want to stop him because they think it's going to shatter the multiverse if you stop a Nexus event, which is Spider-Man 29 and all the people all the Spider people that are on his side. So that's the movie. The gist of the movie. What I wanted to talk about in this video in particular, though, is something that I did not talk about in my Moray and the Faculty of Creation video, or my Webs of Desire Valentine's Day swing episode. I wanted to talk about the Techno Spiders in the Panopticon. And we're going to get into some Rudolph Steiner, and he gets kind of erratic, so manic a bit. So let's get into this. So one of the changes to the Spider-Verse mythology from the comics to the movie is, like I said, it's more tech-based. So Spider-Man was originally created by Stan Lee and Steve Ditko, and it premiered in Amazing Fantasy, the very last issue, because Marvel didn't want to do the character as the story that Stan Lee does, so he just put it in the last issue of a dying comic. But Amazing Fantasy was a series of comics that was all creature feature and like sci-fi fantasy, like 1950s 60s kind of stuff, and that's why Spider-Man, he's always been scientific, but a lot of his early stuff, you notice, draw upon like creature feature stuff, like the lizard, Doc Ock as like the mad scientist, with his where his creation overtakes him. You have the Green Goblin, who's Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, right? And so on and so forth, where that's kind of what they was drawing upon, was this like creature feature. So it was science, but it wasn't like how you view science fiction today, where it's all like tech based, right? And then over time, when as a society we became more tech based, that's where you get like in the live action movies, Spider-Man is like he's got like Iron Man armor, right? And it's like solely tech based. It's not like the more or the turning into creatures. Like you don't have Man Spider. You don't have Peter Parker turning into Man Spider. And so now it's because the way we view science fiction has become strictly tech based. You look at old science fiction movies, and it's like The Thing and what's another one? Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Is it The Women from Venus or whatever? And like all these like campy movies. Even you can even get into like William Castle movies, like the Tingler, and all that stuff. The Creature from the Black Lagoon could be another example. Like that was science fiction, right? Even the spider, the giant spider movie, or Godzilla, and things like that. And then it became, or even Inner Earth stuff. And then it became strictly tech based, and Star Wars and Star Trek, and extremely transhumanist, where all the older stuff was just like more akin to like the Golem, which was a silent film that was where we get Frankenstein, and it wasn't all science based like what Frankenstein would turn into. It would be more the Golem was more like Jesuit magic, alchemy, kind of symbolism in its silent film. So we have that shift of science fiction being more close to alchemy and magic and the unexplained and all of that, and it's still connected to the paranormal, but in this more in a slightly human way, to being completely transhumanist and old tech based and old Star Wars and Star Trek and all that. So you have that shift, and Spider-Man from its creation to now kind of flowed through that shift. And that's where we get this movie, where it's all the Spider-Verse is shown as all tech-based with the watches, and we don't even have Madam Web. Regardless if they remove Madam Web from the Spider-Verse canon and didn't put her in the animated movie because they was doing the horrible live action version or not, or whatever the reasoning for removing Madam Web from this version of the story in Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. Madam Web, she was the blind oracle, the crone, the mentor. She rests at the center of the webs of fate and destiny, and she had clairvoyance. She was at the helm of all of that, and because of her mystical powers that she had, that she was and she was the one that kind of helped form the Spider Society in the comics, or Web Warriors, whatever you want to call them. And so they remove her. They give all her leadership to the Spider Society, to Spider-Man 2099, and then they have him create an algorithm and a techno spider that sends things to the right universe, and it's this huge like robotic spider that looks pretty scary, and he like very very dark and twisted, very like very transhumanist in a way, and it just like does these like laser spider webs, and it will send you back to your universe and all of this. And it's like this really intimidating machine that he creates. And when Miles Morales, who his name Morales, morals, he's saying what's the morality of letting people die just because it's a Nexus event, just because it's canon, it must happen. Like we're supposed to be the good guys, you're supposed to stop them at any cost, right? And so there's again the balance of fate, destiny, and will. With great power comes great responsibility. And in Miles' speech, he says you can't just listen to an algorithm just because your algorithm tells you that this thing must happen. You're just going to let it happen, even though it's horrible. Like, don't you want to stop people from being hurt? Stop the evil of this world, rule the good guys. And again, Spider-Man 2099's whole thing is he doesn't believe in the will. He wants to uphold fate and destiny. And so he gets Miles calls out Spider-Man 2099 for being immoral for just listening to his algorithm, no matter what it says, which we kind of do that now already today, right? Like everyone has their own algorithm on their phones or whatever social media device they get on their laptops or desktops or on their TVs, or all these algorithms, whether it's on YouTube or Instagram or Facebook or whatever, it's personalized to us, and we're only seeing things that they want us to see, right? There was even that video of a guy and a girl looking at the same post, and in the comment section, all the girls' posts are like is a post about relationship stuff, and all the girl posts that she sees is like, dump the guy, he's a scumbag, yeah, girl power. It's all like very modern woman, feminist kind of agenda. And then all the guys are just like, man, you need to leave her. She seems like a whole thing, and she's not going to be good to you. Doesn't sound like a good woman. She sounds like she's kind of crazy. Like, so then you kind of get more of what the modern guy mindset is with the whole, in the modern world. And so, that's a good example of just how far our algorithms are tailored to us. We say something or we think something, and then boom, we're getting an ad for it. It's a whole Orwellian 1984 like culture, and even in we already have in places like China where they're using AI algorithms in their government for to catch criminal activity, or even in the 2020s when all these different countries locked down because of the pandemic. You had neighbors reporting on neighbors and all this stuff, and it was all because they was just seeing their algorithm and they're getting fearful, and we must uphold the new normal, whatever. And that's kind of what the Spider-Man 2099 is doing. It's like, we must uphold the webs of fate and destiny. We don't need to mind will. We have to do this. And Miles Morales is like, but that's not moral, right? There is will. So we have this idea of the algorithm. We have this techno spider that helps send people and things back to the rightful reality, their own world, and all of that heavily reminds me of now something that I didn't learn till after our Moray in the Fabric of Creation video. Is Rudolf Steiner predicted the World Wide Web back in he was born in what, I'm gonna look up actually Rudolf Steiner, what year he was alive in. I believe it was the 1920s. Rudolf Steiner. He was born in 1861 and died in 1925. Yeah. Rudolf Joseph Lorenz Steiner. He was a esotericist, architect, acclaimed clairvoyant like Madame Web, which again they replaced Madame Web in the movie with a techno spider. An occultist, a social reformer, a philosopher of freedom, the 20th century. Yeah, a lot of his stuff. If you're not familiar with Rudolf Steiner's work, it's very manic, it's very erratic. He said a lot of stuff, and it's very. He had his very own, almost like own language. So it's like when you look at Rudolf Steiner's stuff, it's like you have to decipher it, because he had his own kind of language. I found out that one of the many things he said was he talked about techno spiders and these spider beings, and him forcing a spider being unleash a worldwide web out of the Americas. And so I have up here a little bit of I'll post it in the comments afterwards, this link. I'm going to read you off a little bit of what Rudolf Steiner said about these spider beings, so we kind of get an idea of what he talked about. So this is from an article called "The Web of Will and Idea." This is someone talking about Rudolf Steiner. Then I'll read direct quotes from Rudolf Steiner afterwards. This says, as is only to be expected, this article is concise and well researched. He touches on so many important points in such a compressed way that it would be far beyond the scope of this article to speak of them. Therefore, in this commentary, I want to address only 3 of the myriad issues he raises. Who stands behind the internet? The question of compression of spiritual content and our responsibility of the internet. The imagination of the spider. It is frightening how potently Rudolf Steiner describes this spirit world in comparison with the world situation of today. And he then presents a lengthy quote from Perspectives on Human Development, a May 13th, 1921 lecture. Because this lecture is not readily available, I too will quote this export in full. And from the earth will up terrible creations of beings in their character and stand between the mineral kingdom and the plant kingdom as automotive beings with supernatural intellect and immense intellect. When this development takes hold, the earth will be covered as with a web of terrible spiders of enormous wisdom, which, however, in their organization doesn't even reach the plant status. Terrible spiders which will interlock with each other, which will imitate in their movements all that which humanity has thought of with their shadow-like intellect, that was not inspired by a new imagination, through which is to come through spiritual science. All man's thoughts of this kind, which unreal, will come alive. The earth will be covered with terrible mineral plant-like spiders, which will link up with empathy but evil intention, and man will have to unite with these terrible mineral plant-like creatures. He goes on to say these spiders creatures will be of a distinctively ahrimanic character. When you read these prophetic words, the spiritual science today, in an era of worldwide connections via computer and the internet, you may be disheartened to find how quickly this prophecy has become a reality on Earth. It is as if Rudolf Steiner, with his spiritual gaze, described today's internet from beyond the threshold, categorizing, warning humanity that in a not too distant future, with unification of moon and earth, the whole internet computer web, and in fact everything connected with the development of artificial intelligence, will suddenly come alive. Steiner's 1921 lecture is unusual for its strongly prophetic tone, as if the nearly apocalyptic picture of the spiderwebs and their spinners were not enough. Steiner also spoke of supermen, superhuman beings, who began to descend to the earth from planetary spheres in that late 19th century and will continue to appear from the foreseeable future. This content of this short lecture was felt to sufficiently sensational, and the editors felt to be sufficiently sensational, and the editors of the Golden Blade, where it appeared in English in 1960, and had to compare it to science fiction. So they didn't even believe him when Rudolf Steiner was talking about this. They thought he was just being crazy and sensational, and that he was just speaking words of science fiction. But now we have something to compare it to because it's our reality now. So timely and important was this information that Steiner was not alone in presenting these interrelated imaginations of intelligent spiders and world-saving Superman in her book. Woodley Hazel and Little Pip of around 1915, the beloved children's author, also Besselwick pictured the telephone network as a web spun by a spider, while E.B. White, popular American story Charlotte's Web, depicted a clever spider to utilize remarked intelligence to save the life of a pig bound for slaughter. Demonic spiders, often with machine-like natures and always gigantic in size and strength, have also featured plentiful in the popular literature of J.R.R. Tolkien's The Hobbit. Bilbo Baggins and his dwarf comrades were woven into webs of nearly stung to death with their spider captors. The film The Matrix pointed to a real world underlying the maya of the visible world, in which super intelligent insect beings suck the life force out of human beings. In the Spider-Man comic book and movies tell a highly intelligent and very neurotic student of the Bronx High School of Science who is transformed into a spider and superhero of somewhat sardonic humbleness to perhaps modern metamorphosis. And it's certainly no coincidence that in the 1930s, in the very years that Steiner had spoken the possibility of humanity participating in etheric reappearance of the Christ being, the imagination of Superman that Steiner had given in the previous decades appeared in however distorted form in the medium of the comic book, the adventive mid-century equivalent to the video game, as figures as the Batman, Plastic Man, the Green Lantern, Wonder Woman, and of course Superman himself. The prototype of them all, the figure of the superhero, is retained undiminished popularity among boys of all ages into our century and figures ever more strongly in video games. Although he speaks of the spiderwebs appearing in not too distant future, and then implies that they are already here in the form of the World Wide Web. Steiner is clear in his lectures that the physical webs he describes will not manifest until the unification of the Earth and the Moon in 5 to 6,000 years from now. We might say that the idea of the web, with its shadowy concordance of human information, points to such a future. It is far from very clear. It's far from very clear, and little picture that Steiner presents. Steiner also notes that at the same time, the 7th millionth bodily nature will be capable of development only until the 14th year of life. Well, women will then become barren, although I observe numerous adults in the United States acting 14 years old even now. I would still contend that Steiner is speaking of a global psychological change occurring several thousand years into the future. Certainly, the imagination of one age may very well become the realities of the age to come. And of course, his article, however, tends to compress the vast time period by Steiner, so envisioned by Steiner so that the prophesied events become to appear, be predicted for the present time. You will be disheartened to find how quickly this prophecy has become reality on Earth. The net of Ahrimanic spider beings developing out of the internet around the Earth stands right from the beginning of the direct relationship appearing in a physical body. Here, to attempt and made purely formed to create a worldwide web that connects so many people connect so many people as possible, but in a way that mankind becomes increasingly separated from the cosmos and the hierarchies, and thus bounds up in what is described as above as a spider web. Okay, I'll end it there. I read quite a bit there from the article. I'll post a link later on after this video is done in the comment section. But that is a modern day article of someone talking about Steiner. So we get that he prophesies these spider beings being technological and kind of engulfing man in his own vices, and connecting all man together, but disconnecting man from the universe, from God. And it's very doom and gloom. I'll read, these are shorter. I'll read a couple of direct quotes from Steiner now, so we get the from words of his, so we get to hear it from his own words. And even though these are shorter, these are they're still going to be pretty heady because of how he speaks. This is what a true spiritual science tells us today. Yet, such a spiritual science encounters opposition. We are threatened by a conscience that would exclude us from spirituality and unite us with the spiderweb of the earth. This conscience dwells in some people, for they believe that it will be to their advantage if they train only themselves spiritually and leave others to live ignorance. In the most cases, however, this is done in ignorance. Basically, people do not have the remotest idea of appalling earthly destiny they are approaching by uniting themselves with this ancient spiritual knowledge called the 16 paths of human. Oh, my screenshot cut the rest of that off, but he referenced spiders there. Another one, a quote I'll read from him. No, they comprehend nothing but what has been produced by a soul spiritual element of torture. The human being torn limb from limb, the mineralized human being, that part of man that one day will be woven into the spider covered of the earth. It is not sad that the power of civilization belongs now to those who consider the thoughts of truth itself, which is most inwardly and intimately related to the salvation and the whole mission of mankind's development in the world. Okay. And another quote here is, science is something that solely has significance from the moon's separation until it returns something that out of the spider thoughts of today then turn into spider beings. A knowledge must be prepared that takes hold of human beings quite differently, and this can be done only if science is lifted into artistic vision. We must admit that science is the present day sense. In the present day sense, the word can reach only to a certain level. Only to a certain level. It reaches only as far as the mineral element in the mineral, plant, and human kingdoms. Already in the plant kingdom, science must change into art. Still more so in the animal kingdom. And another one is for the concrete implication is that the intellectual shadow-like thoughts spun inwardly in human beings today will one day cover the earth like a spider web. Human beings will become entangled in it if they are not willing to rise above these shadowy thoughts. Another one is, as the ugliest of men, they will fall into the swarm of spiders and be united with it. Spider creatures is the name of Rudolf Steiner gave to the various types of spiritual, and here's a definition. So, spider creatures is the name of Rudolf Steiner gave to various types of spiritual or elementary beings. They can only be perceived supersensually and have no direct relationship with spiders found on the earthly nature. Of earthly nature. So there we go. There's all that. You don't have to suffer through me reading awkwardly, trying to decipher any more Rudolf Steiner's transcribed lectures. The spider is still here on my computer screen. Awesome. He's hanging out for this entire thing, it looks like. But anyways, so Rudolf Steiner, had kind of foreshadowed this techno, World Wide Web, AI, algorithmic thing covering the earth, separating man from nature and God, but giving him man a everlasting knowledge of the physical realm, of man's realm, though, and being consumed in technology and knowledge and kind of crushing the imagination, which is a topic I've kind of talked about on previous videos, like my Who Framed Roger Rabbit video, for instance, and my Mooring the Fabric of Creation video, a little bit, but I didn't get into the Rudolf Steiner side of things. And so you have that, and then you have Miles Morales in this movie, who was like, listen, Spider-Man 2099, listen, Miguel O'Hara, we have free will. That's the third thing. We have fate, destiny, then we also have free will. What you're doing, upholding these canon events, Nexus events, is not moral. We're supposed to be the good guys. And we see that in today's culture of people not having compassion to others. They'll just film something happening, that lonesome, doomsome feeling that we get, which is a feeling that people in the industrial age got, which is why we got people like H.P. Lovecraft and his whole doom and gloom spirituality of Lovecraftian way of thinking, and which it has connection to the Sumerian gods, and so there are some mystical truths in it, but it's overshadowed, one could say, with his doom and gloom that he felt of the industrial age, these industrial landscapes that was consuming him. Now we're in a digital age, and we have video games and music and comic books that all point more of a nihilistic doom and gloom Lovecraftian way of thinking, and we sense that separation, that being consumed by the techno spiders, right? Through being chronically online, having brain rot, and all this and that. And so a lot of Gen Z are and even millennials are more pessimistic, more nihilistic, and all this and that. And they're slowly adopting this Lovecraftian way of doom, of doomerism in the digital age, just like they suffered from in the industrial age, because we're being consumed by these techno digital spiders, and the algorithm, as I mentioned earlier, is being set up. That we each have our own, instead of having our, the joke is, oh, my my FBI agent is listening, right? Now instead of FBI agent is, oh, my algorithm is listening. I have an AI assistant, right? Whether it's an AI assistant or your algorithm's listening, or the FBI agent, or whatever. You have this idea of Big Brother, and like I said, other governments have already established AI into their government structures. China is doing it with their social credit scores and how they do all kinds of different things. And the West is getting it. It's not like the West and the Americas isn't getting it. They're just getting it different because we're different kind of, we're a country of we're a democracy or a constitutional republic. We have this cultural zeitgeist sense of somewhat still of the American dream. We're the American people. So they can't. You can't do a panopticon, a algorithmic techno spider panopticon the same way in every country. So of course the West is going to be constructed and implemented differently than in other countries. I've talked about in the past in like our King of Branch show about how you introduce things to society is and make it seem natural, is you have to implement it from a government standpoint, from a war standpoint, or a military standpoint. So the government so it's government / war is the first thing you need to introduce your technology to, and then health is the next one. And you can do these really in at the same time, which is what they're doing. So you need government and war. Technology needs to be introduced on that bracket, and the second bracket is health or medical. Is the second bracket that technology that needs to be introduced, and then the last one is entertainment. And so we see AI being used for entertainment. Even in fact, I just saw yesterday the first AI movie studio was being founded. Solely AI movie studio is being founded now. And we already have videos using AI. I use it sometimes to make little things for the channel, and we have that. we have it being used in medical for in like health watches, like your wristbands you do when you work out and whatnot. And now you can instead of talking to a nurse practitioner, some places you can talk to a AI person before you talk to a real person in the medical field. So we have that. We have Neuralink, of course. We have Siri and all kinds of different uh, chat GBTs and whatnot for entertainment as well. And in the government sense, we have we have DODE's Department of Efficiency. They are solely using AI to help come through all their data, I believe. And then we also have, of course, Project Stargate. And just like everything, once something is implemented in a corporate world, it's really hard to root it out because then it's rooted pretty deep. That's why like woke culture in Hollywood isn't going away overnight. We still have DEI things because they're been implemented, even though they're closing their departments. Either they are closing the departments, and it's still the idea is still there, or they're just renaming their departments into something else. So it's hard to when something gets implemented into a government corporate infrastructure to root it back out. So now that we have Doge and Project Stargate and all this, like it's gonna now who knows how the military and the FBI is starting to use AI. And even researchers are using AI facial recognition to try to find people and whatnot. So and governments are using that as well, and we have all this stuff. So that is like the whole Big Brother 1984 Orwellian panopticon. And really, what is a panopticon? So right now, I'm going to read you guys off the definition of a panopticon. So Wikipedia says the panopticon is a design of institutional building with an inbuilt system of control originated by the English philosopher and social theorist Jeremy Bentham in the 18th century. The concept is to allow all prisoners of an institution to be observed by a single correction officer without the inmates knowing whether or not they are being watched. So, think about we have cameras on everything. Even I forget his name, but the guy who does Oracle AI, who is part of Project Stargate, wants even more cameras everywhere to be monitoring people. And even Gen Z language is being there are Gen Z slang words on top of brain rot. They also have they're self-censoring in their slang because there's cameras everywhere and they don't want to get caught saying certain words. They might say like quote unalived or graped or corn or whatever, and it's self-censoring. And if you're always on camera, or if you're on a YouTube channel, you need to you know make sure that the algorithm doesn't strike you down. But these are self-centering words that are being also used in day-to-day lives of Gen Z and millennial people, even when they're just talking IRL. Um, so it's not like normal slang words where it was invented to mean a certain thing, right? It wasn't like, oh, that's swag, or that's radical, that's tubular, or that's Gucci, or whatever, or far out, man. Whatever you want to say. Right? It's not even niche when you get into certain groups, like in my high school, the some of my friends we used to play the game, right? And I'm not gonna explain the game, but whoever is watching this and knows the game, I'm sorry, but we all have to start over because now we all know the game. Um, we had an extra role in the game where the word pudding, or pudding, like pudding without the G, uh, was a clever way to uh, it was like a code word for the game that we would use in our close area. Um, but so the game was universal for a time being, but we also had our own thing. And then you have, like, in rave culture, you have plur, peace, love, unity, respect, and each niche group has their own language, right? And so it's not like that. It's completely, Gen Z slang is completely either brain rot, or that means nothing and everything, or it's just themselves censoring themselves. And because of this panopticon that's being built around us, this big brother, spider, techno spiders, whatever you want to call it. And we see it in that fashion. We see it arise in that fashion through it. That's how it's affecting our culture, with having us our self-centered and self-doubt and second guess, because we're so worried about that, because we have cameras in our phones and our computers and all around us, and so a lot of this is doom and gloom. But I wanted to bring this up in correlation with the Spiderverse, and I want to express, because I'm getting towards the end of what I wanted to talk about here. Spider-Man. When I saw Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse and Across the Spider-Verse, I saw both of them in theaters opening night, and especially around Into the Spider-Verse, I remember the energy of it, which is immaculate in the theater. You had men to boys, of people of all ages, just the energy was excited, and like when I was watching the movie for the first time, and Miles does his leap of faith, like I was like, oh yeah, let's go, like I was excited, and I almost even jumped out of my seat in the theater because I was just so pumped about it, and it invokes that hero archetype in us, and all kinds of other energies, and even there was kids that were like, I want to watch it again. I want to watch it again when we was leaving the theater. Me and my friend. Um, and so the energy was just inspiring. And so I think we should learn from that, not just the hero archetype, and take our own leap of faith, and remain strong in our morals, but also remember that we have free will. And the idea of weaving your fate is working with the weavers, working with God, working with fate, destiny, with your own will, right? Knowing what you can control and what you can't control. So I'll end you with the idea of the Stoics. Is, of course, the idea there's two groups of things that you can control, things you can't control. What you can control is your actions and your emotions. What you can't control is the outside world. You have to adapt to it through your strength and your emotions and your actions. And that dance, that's the dance of the spider. That's how you weave your fate. That is what you're supposed to be doing. And that's how you manifest. You visualize, but then you do the action. You can't just be a new ager that just dreams all the time and sits stationary. You have to do your action. Physical labor is part of manifesting. And even Jesus taught that in his teachings, that you have to do the work, right? So the answer to being a resistance against the techno spiders and the AI arachnid algorithm and the panopticon and the deep state, or the Illuminati, or the Cabal, or the Freemasons, or whatever you want to call them, whatever you want to call this evil demonic force, which again, Steiner relates. It's not just technical, but it's obviously demonic as well. I mean, we even have people like Elon Musk, like a decade ago, talking about how AI is, at this point, it's inevitable because someone's going to create it, and there are so many demons, and it's very akin to the Oppenheimer's "I am become death, destroy a world" speech. And we're at this nexus point ourselves to not be swallowed up by these AI spiders. What you have to do is, stand for you, know what you stand in your morals, do the work, remain connected to the earth, remain connected to God, and stand fully in your power. Anyways, so that is all I wanted to talk about, really, in my Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse Kingdom reviews. Again, it was just so I can be talking about the techno spiders and Rudolph Steiner stuff. Again, if you want fully deep dive into it, there was more in the Fabric of Creation video, and our Webs of Desire, a Valentine's Day swing for a little bit extra. Coming up on channel KOK, we're going to have more Kingdom reviews, getting back to movies that are actual, acting film, live action films and stuff that aren't animated. The last two were a throwback animated, kind of back to back, with Elemental, and now Across the Spider-Verse. So more films in Kingdom reviews, more Kingdom Branch show. episodes, more deep dives, and we have a guest coming on soon that we're going to be recording next week, but I'm not going to release it till next month. So it's a returning guest. I'm excited to announce it, but I won't announce it yet. And I also have a guest appearance that I'm doing soon while I'm going on another person's podcast. So to talk about a completely different topic, and it's one of my favorite topics to talk about. So we got more stuff coming up. And of course, all of this is leading up to a Father's Day special to honor fathers and talk about masculine archetypes. And that's where our eyes are on the prize to get to that one for Father's Day. And all of these are kind of weaving up to it at the moment. So yeah, if you have your own spider wisdom, drop it in the comments. Like and subscribe to the channel. Share our videos. Suggest things to talk about or movies to check out, whatever. And I'll see you guys next time here on channel KOK.